Good afternoon, everyone. This is Ann Cuppinger with the Community Technical Assistance Center, or CTAC, and I'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone who's joined us for today's webinar, What is the Role of the Youth Peer Advocate? I hope that those of you who are joining us today were able to join us on January 11th when Youth Power did a really wonderful webinar on how Youth Power can help your organization implement youth peer services. If you weren't able to join us, and you missed that webinar, you can always check out the recording and get the slides on the CTAC website. There's a calendar there where you can look on January 11th, and you'll find that webinar listed with a link to the recording and the slides. You can also use the search function on our website. For today's webinar, before we get started, I want to orient everyone to the WebEx system for those of you who aren't familiar with it yet. If you haven't already done so, please phone into the webinar using the audio conference information found in the Event Info tab above the slides. When you join the webinar, you're going to be placed on mute to avoid background noise that might distract other people from listening to the webinar. If you come across any technical issues during the webinar, you can chat to the host, and that's Brianna, and she'll be able to assist you. You will have the opportunity to submit questions during the webinar, and we've reserved some time at the end of the webinar to answer your questions. The way that you submit those questions is to click on the chat box, and if your chat box isn't open right now, if you look on the top right corner of your screen, you'll see kind of a speech bubble, and if you press that, it will open up the chat box, and you'll notice that you can send a message to the host by using the drop-down menu where it says Send To. And you can send any of your questions that you have to the host, and we'll gather those to answer at the end of the webinar. We do encourage you to submit them along the way, and that way we can have them ready to answer when we're done. So I'd really like to welcome our two presenters today, Azaria Wittekind and Alex Fristina. They both work for Youth Power. Azaria is currently the Youth Peer Services Training and Credentialing Coordinator, and for the past 2 years, she's been the Regional Youth Partner for the Western region, where she supported and connected and provided agencies and youth peer advocates with lots of opportunities for professional development. Alex Fristina is currently the Long Island Regional Youth Partner for Youth Power, and he's worked to educate and support agencies in building a youth-guided culture while aiding youth in speaking up and understanding the value of their stories. He has also spearheaded the Youth Power initiative called Harnessing Hip Hop, which is a workshop series focusing on creative coping skills, finding wellness, and building youth engagement. So without further ado, I'd like to let Alex get us started with today's webinar.
And thank you very much, and I want to welcome everyone to the webinar. Today, Azaria and I will be discussing not only what the role of a youth peer advocate is, but also how you can benefit from having youth peer advocates and what ways that you can support them and make sure that they are integrated properly into your team. So first I'm going to start, we always start with a story around peer support. So a man falls into a hole so deep he can't get out. A doctor walks by, the man calls for help, the doctor writes a prescription, tosses it in the hole, and walks on. A priest walks by, the man tries again, the priest writes a prayer, tosses it in the hole, and walks on. Finally, a friend walks by, and the man asks for help. To his surprise, the friend jumps in with him. "Why did you do that?" the man asks. "Now we're both in the hole." "Yes," the friend responds, "but I've been in this hole before, and I know the way out." And we like to use this because it really highlights the whole concept behind peer support, and that is a young person, or in this case, any person who has been in those similar shoes, being able to use their story and use their past to help show you the way and kind of guide you as to what helped them. So there's a long history of peer support, demonstrating the value of having a formalized role in which peers who are further along in their recovery journey provide support to peers going through similar circumstances. A youth peer advocate is a young adult between the ages of 18 and 30 who has self-identified as a person who has firsthand experience with social, emotional, medical, developmental, substance use, or behavioral health challenges. And as you'll see on the slide, peer support is someone sharing their story or story of resilience and empowering someone to be self-directed. But peer advocacy is really the act of empowering someone to speak up for themselves, but also taking on the role to advocate for someone else if they need that assistance or they say they need that assistance. Youth peer advocates assist youth with gaining or regaining the ability to make independent choices and assist youth in playing a proactive role in their treatment. They connect youth to community resources, services, and help youth develop a network for information and support. Youth peer advocates must also use their lived experience and the services that they have received to assist supporting youth in their resilience, recovery, and wellness as deemed appropriate and beneficial to not only the youth they're helping, but to themselves. They must demonstrate qualities of leadership and have the ability to maintain confidentiality and adhere to all HIPAA requirements at all times. A youth peer advocate offers a unique perspective to treatment teams as a young person who has received services themselves. What they'll bring to the table for these services is knowledge of the provider system that they are working in, knowledge of the community resources and opportunities, knowledge of the peer movement and resources to self-advocate, and the ability to share their own personal resilience story so that they can support young people in building their own resilience and self-advocacy. So that's really giving another young person the ability to say that they have made it through this so they can see the hope, they can see the light, and understand that there is a way out of the current situation they're in. And now I want to discuss with you the benefits of having a youth peer advocate, but not only the benefits to the youth, but also the families and the adult allies, organizations, and communities. The benefits for youth is an ability to connect on a unique level with young people that they're working with. And I always like to bring up when my nephew used to live with me, and it's something as simple as my mom would go up to him and be like, "You need a haircut." And he'd be like, "No, I don't, my hair is fine." And then I could walk in 10 minutes later and be like, "Hey, your hair looks a little long." And he's like, "Oh yeah, you're right." It's just like a different connection and a different ability to connect with young people because it doesn't feel like it's coming from a authoritative figure. A youth peer advocate can also model healthy relationships and friendships, the ability to guide and support youth through services and systems, provide youth with advocacy skills so that they will be able to speak up for themselves and advocate for themselves and their needs, provide young people with hope for their own future, support young people in finding and utilizing coping skills, and studies have proven that peer services reduce recidivism, the cost of treatment, and lower the need of treatment over time. The way families benefit is it provides hope for their child. Many times it's hard to see an end of the road, so to have this young person who's been through similar but is able to hold this position and be a young professional, it really helps to show that there is a way out of what your youth is currently going through. And it also helps to bridge the communication gap between youth and the caregivers and also the service providers. How adults, organizations, policymakers, and communities benefit from youth peer advocates. YPAs provide a unique perspective and contribution to the team. They develop a better understanding of the needs and the issues of the youth population the agencies are serving. They bring clarity to the mission and they bring clarity to the mission of the organization and agency, and they help them be more youth-guided and family-driven and cultural competent. And that's cultural competency around youth culture. They enhance the commitment and energy of adults who see value in youth-guided practice. They increase its understanding of how young people view the world, so agencies and adults can get a better view of maybe how young people are viewing situations instead of just trying to assert how they would feel in that situation. They interact with youth and young adults to overcome the youth cultural stereotype, and it helps you to see the positive modeling of what these youth can become, because many times we have a tendency to see people for the bad that they've done recently or what they've done recently instead of seeing the hope and what they can become. So these are just some benefits of youth peer advocates, but I'll let Azaria take you more into the credentialing side and what it takes to become a youth peer advocate.
Thank you, Alex.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to just talk about the credentialing. These are a few examples of some of the content that will be going into the New York State Youth Peer Advocate credentialing. All youth peer advocates will be trained in these areas to support their work, but credentialing is only one tool in the tool belt for developing the youth peer advocate role. To support the integration of youth peer advocates into the youth service provider team, there's a variety of items for the organization to consider additionally. So the New York credentialing is going to talk about the peer support history, youth-guided practices, trauma-informed practices, cultural competence, professional expectations, small group facilitation skills, system navigation, supporting skill development around wellness and recovery, advocacy, goal setting, and independence. So some of the things that youth peer advocates have reported as barriers. So youth peer advocates have existed for some time under a variety of titles in different settings and systems. Despite this, there has historically been a lack of continuity, clarity, and unified training and supports. It's really important to consider the barriers that have been identified as we explore the steps organizations can take to move forward. So some of the reported barriers have been ageism, stigma, fear, discomfort, and misunderstanding of the services that they're providing and or within the organization. They're just not getting the support that they need. Lack of clarity in the role as a youth peer advocate, like their expectations within the role, understanding the responsibilities of themselves and others around them, the frequency of meaningful trainings. There's a lack of meaningful trainings for them, and the lack of need for, so they need a lot of supervision and support, and they're not getting that. Regulating strong emotions and wellness, so having their own, regulating their own experiences and trauma, and then also being in a system that might re-traumatize them. And also just support around defining words such as safety and boundaries. So these things are some of the things you want to keep clear for them and support around. So we're going to talk a little bit about this in some of the following slides. Okay, so in order for agencies and organizations to fully support the integration of youth peer advocates, there must first be a level of understanding, support, and structure for youth-guided practice. So youth-guided practice means that young people have the right to be empowered, educated, and given a decision-making role in the care of their own lives, as well as the policies and procedures governing care for all youth in the community, state, and nation. So this kind of hints at our slogan is nothing about us without us. So if there's conversations being had about young people, there should be a young person there, or at least a youth peer advocate. So without buy-in for youth-guided practice and a clear understanding of what that entails, agencies and organizations will struggle to successfully integrate youth peer advocates into the service delivery team. This often results in youth peer advocates being treated as kids rather than young adults serving in a professional role and with professional expectations. That all needs to be clear for them and the agents, the staff working within the agency. The first step in supporting youth peer advocates and promoting their integration is by understanding and incorporating youth-guided practice. Becoming youth-guided is a continuous process, and there are supports to help you along the way. So setting the stage, A great support in becoming youth guided and supporting the integration of youth peer advocates is by partnering with youth-led groups, including Youth Power. In our previous webinar, we detailed the variety of supports offered by Youth Power. By partnering with youth-led groups, you can gain insight from other young peers and get a unique perspective. Once there's a clear idea on youth-guided practice, agencies and organizations should evaluate their readiness. There are tools available such as the Youth On Board Checklist and Youth Involvement Questionnaire that assist you in evaluating where you are currently and what steps you can take to move forward as an organization to be more youth-guided. It's also important to have a flexible plan that leaves room for problem solving and creativity. With anything new, there are bound to be bumps along the way. And having a flexible plan, you are able to address both the needs of your agency, organization, and the needs of the youth peer advocate joining your team. Lastly, staff and clinicians need to be prepared for this new role. They need to make sure they're aware of the purpose, role, and activities that are to come, and ask them to help create. Hold on, where am I? So to ask them to help create an environment where youth are meaningfully engaged. So some of the pre-hire considerations are, oh wait, I think that's Alex's. Oh, so back to, sorry, back to the other slide. So you want to create an environment where youth are meaningfully engaged. Staff and clinicians should be trained to be mindful and familiar with youth culture, ageism, adultism, tokenism, paternalism, marginalization, and cooptation. I'm actually going to pass this off now to Alex, and he's going to share with you more considerations before hiring a youth peer advocate.
Great, thank you, Azaria. So some pre-hiring considerations. One of the biggest things we've seen over time and heard of is young people coming into positions as youth peer advocates without a clear job description. So that is something we really want to advocate for, is having a clear job description with clear expectations of the role based off of the state plan amendment is a critical component of the hiring of a YPA. Youth Power has sample job descriptions available and are in the process of developing a standard resource that will be available across the state. Youth peer advocates are also expected to abide by a youth peer advocate code of ethics, which is part of their training. So this is something that will be put in place prior to being in the positions, but it's really important that each job has their job description clearly laid out, and so young people know what the role they're coming into is. Another thing we advocate for pre-hiring, and we know that it's different depending on location in the state, but we see a lot of times that transportation turns into a reason young people aren't applying for the job, and we may be losing out on some great candidates and great advocates because of having a transportation clause in our hiring where it says you must have your driver's license. So we think that this is something that some places, obviously, like I said, it's regional, and we understand that there are some places where it's very hard to have public transportation, but the agency should consider if it's necessary for youth peer advocates to have a driver's license or if they can use public transportation, because a YPA's or youth peer advocates' ability to use public transportation is something that can become an asset. If they have to teach other young people how to travel throughout the region, having that ability and having that experience themselves is a very helpful tool, because I know some people that have had their car their whole life, and if they had to take public transit, they'd get lost. So they can't show someone else and help support someone else on that journey. It's also helpful to understand the limitations and barriers surrounding paratransit for youth peer advocates and any staff with disabilities that utilize this service. Paratransit requires scheduling rides well in advance, and due to the nature of the shared service, it utilizes travel windows in which a person will be picked up or dropped off in a time frame that can vary by as much as 30 minutes. So to know that if someone's using paratransit, you may have to be a little more flexible in their start time or end time because it's really not dictated by themselves but by the paratransit availability. And also to remember that peers need peers. All employees benefit from having peers in similar positions that they can network with and relate to. We strongly encourage you to hire at least 2 youth peer advocates or have other peers on staff that the youth peer advocate can connect to. We also encourage organizations in taking advantage of learning and networking opportunities through Youth Power, such as the Please group, which is a peer leadership support and development group that works regionally. There's one in each region throughout the state where young people can connect with other peers and discuss issues they're having around supervision or different topics that they want to learn more about, and it connects them with Youth Power's network and offers them these trainings. Recruiting youth peer advocates does not begin when you are ready to hire, but rather the culture and practices you support and engage in leading up to the hiring process. So this starts with building an understanding of the connection to our social justice and civil rights movement, utilizing existing movements, events, and activities to draw in new people, initiating youth advisory or leadership groups. The young people you serve may very well be your next youth peer advocate, and we see that so often. Young people that start speaking up for themselves, and then it turns into them being leaders and coming into youth peer advocate positions. Partner with other organizations and agencies, recognize the effects of stigma and discrimination, and ensure approaches are culturally competent and address current youth culture. So during the interview process and onboarding, we recommend having a diverse role and perspectives involved in the interview and hiring process. We recommend a young person is included on the interview team. Youth Power also has sample interview questions that can be utilized to support this process. And during the onboarding policies and procedures we recommend should be welcoming for all staff. We recommend supporting staff to get to know the organization during orientation by going over the agency's missions and values. Youth peer advocates will receive training on serving as a youth peer advocate through the credentialing process. It's important to provide them with an orientation to their roles that include how they fit into the culture and structure of your specific organization. Topics to consider including during orientation and the hiring process are HR and program orientation, overview and understanding the youth peer advocate role, workplace expectations, boundaries, effective communication, strategic sharing, role plays, HIPAA and mandated reporting, cultural competency, trauma-informed care. A very important one is self-care and support, safety planning and navigating and system navigation. Youth Power is available to provide technical assistance in developing an orientation specific for your organization if you see that you need help in reaching any of these different topics, or maybe what is needed for your specific organization. You can always reach out to Youth Power for technical assistance. So youth peer advocates need consistent supervision and coaching. Youth peer advocates can be supervised by individuals who have a minimum of 4 years providing family peer support services or youth peer support services, with at least 1 year in which is as a credentialed youth peer advocate or family peer advocate, with access to clinical consultation as needed. Or it could be a mental health professional who, with training in youth peer support and training, with access to discipline-specific clinical consultations as on a planned and regular basis. As we are building the workforce, this will be the first time many youth peer advocates are working in this role. To support this, youth peer advocates need support and coaching. Professional development is a critical aspect of all services provided in this field. Youth peer advocates should be provided an ongoing professional development opportunities related to their work and supporting them in their roles. When supporting this position, you should consider what natural mentorship opportunities are available. This includes team building opportunities and providing staff with the opportunity just to connect with each other on a more personal but still appropriate level. In accordance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, employees must provide reasonable accommodations for employees with disabilities to perform essential functions of their job. These accommodations should be clearly written and defined to identify what an individual needs in order to meet the expectations of their position. Some examples are a flex schedule if the individual cannot get up in the mornings due to various reasons, needing extended time to write or read out notes. And a reasonable accommodation does not go into details of the specific disability. It simply addresses the barrier and how the agency can support with the accommodation. As previously stated, this is still a professional role with professional expectations. Youth peer advocates should have clear understanding of the safety and boundaries, as well as how to address concerns as they arise. And I always like to point out, as we're saying these accommodations, it's really important to understand this is a professional role, and these rules apply to all professional roles. It's not just saying because these young people have a past history that you need to take this into effect. These are accommodations that are given to every person with disabilities, and to make sure that they can reach their goals and carry out the functions of the job. And then I like to end on this, well, my part on this, because I think it's very important that we understand with youth peer advocates, sometimes we see information being disclosed for them or kind of people stepping over the boundaries. So it's important to respect the person, and that's the person individually, but also as we hire more and more youth peer advocates, to respect the position in the professional field. So we don't want to make assumptions on what a youth peer advocate is or isn't capable of. Always ask and encourage them to ask questions. There is a healthy balance between supporting flexible positions and holding high standards. Young adults who are taking on these roles may be in college or need to ensure they are taking care of their own wellness while employed in this position. So set clear procedures and policies on how youth peer advocates can work with their supervisors to ensure there is a flexibility that they need while still meeting all expectations of their job duties. While it is part of the role of a youth peer advocate to share their story, it is crucial that youth peer advocates and any peers have the right to choose when and what they disclose and to whom. Avoid volunteering youth peer advocates to share their story, and have conversations with them first to determine whether or not they're comfortable sharing that part of their story with groups or individuals. Because many times we hear people say like, oh, the youth peer advocate at our organization went through that. And that may be some oversharing and disclosing someone else's story. So we would much rather someone say like, oh, I may know someone that could speak to that, and going back to them and asking if they feel comfortable speaking in that setting. So these are really just considerations to take into place prior to hiring a youth peer advocate to make sure you're culturally ready to be culturally competent around youth peer advocates, and make sure that you're supporting them and not kind of throwing them into situations where they may not feel comfortable or able to succeed. And now to give you a little more information on what youth peer advocates have spoken about in the past, Zaria is going to share with you some feedback she got from doing youth peer advocate interviews.
Thank you, Alex. So in 2016, I interviewed youth peer advocates predominantly in Western New York, and these are some of the reports that I got back from them. So youth peer advocates reported that they really appreciated laid-back supervision style. They'd like to be held accountable. They like it when their supervisors check in on their personal and their professional lives. They really need that regular supervision. They also like when they're being encouraged to apply for full-time positions and advancements within the agency when they are ready. They like to have clear expectations of the position and education on the populations that they're working with. Youth peer advocates also need to be in a good place in their own recovery with the right supports in place before becoming a youth peer advocate. This helps keep our movement moving forward, and youth peer advocates really need to be in a level of recovery to really support a young person, because it makes the agency look bad, and it also doesn't provide a level of support that a young person really needs. Youth peer advocates also want to be treated as young professionals. So negative perceptions of youth peer advocate positions has led to youth peer advocates not feeling valued, not getting hired into full-time positions within the agency, and even hired into other agencies. Some youth peer advocates feel supported by their agencies, while others feel looked down upon or not taken seriously due to their position and how it's been construed within the agency, and not hiring young adults that are in recovery. So please take advantage of reaching out to Youth Power for technical assistance with our regional youth partners. We'd also like to see you take advantage of our up-and-coming Youth Peer Advocate Leaders meetings for support and connecting with other agencies that are providing Youth Peer Advocate services. These are our Youth Peer Advocate Leaders meetings. And please take advantage of the CTAC listserv or Youth Power's e-news to get up-to-date info on up-and-coming trainings being offered. While trainings for supervisors are not currently available, we are exploring national resources to support supervisors in this new role. If you have recommendations or questions you would like us to explore in the future, please reach out to us and provide that information, or just ask us questions. So on our website, if you'd like to get involved or would like more information, so Youth Power, we offer youth peer support and development trainings they're actually meetings for youth peer advocates. It's professional development meetings. We have Youth Peer Advocate Leaders meetings. This is our YPOW meetings that support and they provide support and collaboration for supervisors of youth peer advocates. We have the how-tos of youth guided practice. It's one of our guides on our website. And under our online resources, you can find all this information on our website under our resources tab and YP original material. We have tip sheets, guides, webinars, and videos that have been created by Youth Power staff and our members. So if you'd like to get involved or would like more information, please reach out to Youth Power or your regional youth partner. And these are our regional youth partners. They are available to you throughout all of New York State. We provide trainings and support to youth and adults. We support youth peer advocates themselves in various ways. We support agencies with youth-guided practices and implementing youth peer advocates into service systems. We have 2 vacant positions right now, so please look. Well, actually, they were both posted recently. If you know a qualified young adult, please encourage them to apply. So we have Alex Rosina, who's on the call with us today. He's our Long Island Regional Youth Partner. Mika Gonzalez is our Central Regional Youth Partner. We have our New York City RYP, that's a vacant position, and our Western RYP. That was my previous position. And Brennan Williams is our Hudson River Regional Youth Partner. If you're not really sure of what region you fall into, please feel free to contact our main office, which is actually listed under the New York City RYP and the Western Regional Youth Partner position. So that would conclude our webinar for today. If we want to open it up for some questions.
Thank you, Azaria, and thank you, Alex. We do have a few questions. One of the questions has to do with the sample job descriptions, and I'm wondering if that's something that's available on your website or how folks would get a hold of the sample job description.
We do not currently have them available on our website, but we will have them through technical assistance, essentially, is the best way to get that information.
So can you say a little bit, Azaria, about how providers might request technical assistance from you? That's something you addressed in more detail on the last webinar, but I think it would be great for you to tell folks on this webinar a little bit more about that.
For technical assistance, we'd ask you to either contact our main office or one of your regional youth partners.
And I think at that point you have them complete kind of a technical assistance kind of request form, is that right?
Yes, we have a technical assistance request form. It helps us keep track of what we're offering as technical assistance. It provides an outline of some of the things that we will provide assistance for. It's really, and also to keep track of the expectations. It evaluates where you are currently also as an agency and moving forward.
Thanks. Somebody, just sort of following up a little bit on this question of the job description, someone asked if you could talk a little bit about what should and shouldn't be included in a job description in a general way. So I think maybe what this questioner is getting at are what are some of the kind of misconceptions about the role of a youth peer advocate?
So some agencies are concerned whether or not they can advertise it as a position based on the age and having experience in systems. So that's one of the job requirements, is that they are able to share that they've had system experience. It doesn't need to be an extreme level of detail. They should have the ability to strategically share their experiences in the system. They also need to be able to advocate for themselves in various ways in systems. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh, so the qualifications is essentially one of the biggest ones. And
so the job description will outline some of the qualifications for the youth peer advocate that relate to their lived experience, their willingness to share their lived experience, and their ability to navigate and then empower young people to navigate the systems that they're interacting with. Are there any, in terms of the role of the youth peer advocate once they're actually working for an agency, you did talk a little bit, I think Alex talked a little bit about the kind of work that the youth peer advocates do directly with young people. Can one of you say a little bit more about what that work looks like?
So that's the kind of the service component. So your job description should really outline some of those components, such as skill building, coaching, self-advocacy and empowerment, and also the ability to support community connections and natural supports.
Terrific. Thanks. We've got some questions here about age. So I'm going to ask a couple of them together. One question is around what's the minimum age for a youth peer advocate? And also, what happens when a youth peer advocate turns 30, and what can be next for them? And can they still keep their youth peer advocate role, or what might be some opportunities for them after they turn 30? So
youth peer advocates, they have to legally be able to apply for the position, and outlined in the SPA credentialing, it's 18 to 30. And after that, we're encouraging agencies to support them to move into either the peer realm or whatever their heart's desire, or moving into other positions within the agency, or supervisor positions also. We definitely want to encourage agencies to promote our youth peer advocates into supervisory roles. So they could be in teaching roles, policy roles, they could also become clinicians themselves, for instance, additionally.
Thanks, Azaria. We have a follow-up question around the tasks that youth peer advocates should not do as a part of their work. I think you just described a little bit some of what youth peer advocates will be doing with youth, but are there any roles that you see youth peer advocates put in or tasks they've been asked to do that you think really should not be part of their job description?
We actually have a tool for that. It describes what to do and not to do as a youth peer advocate. I'm not sure where that is. We can, okay. Oh, sorry. You're fine, Alex.
I just wanted to say, like, one thing we see a lot and we don't recommend is using youth peer advocates as spies or people to, like, get intel from the young people. We want a youth peer advocate to be someone who can support and be a listening ear and be that person that they go to. We don't want them to be utilized as someone you could say, like, go find out why they're not taking their medication today, or they shouldn't be used as spies or ways to manipulate young people into doing what the organization or the support staff wants them to do.
They also, oh man, I lost my train of thought. So it's really anything outside of the role. Their biggest their biggest role is to support a young person to advocate for themselves. They're not providing transportation to and from things like if they want to go to a support group, the youth peer advocate can maybe bring them one time to support them to continue to go to that support group, but they're not transporting that young person to support group every week. They would just bring them to help support them with, like, the first time that they're going to a support group or reaching out to resources in the community. They're really just helping to bridge some of the things that youth peer or young people, like, fall through the cracks with when if they struggle to going places and trying new things. Is there somebody else that can support you with this?
Terrific. Yeah. No, that's good. That's really helpful, I think. And I think it probably really depends on the setting in which the youth peer advocate is working with the youth. So we have youth peer advocates working in residential programs, working with youth who are hospitalized. We have youth peer advocates working with youth who are involved in the home and community-based services waiver program and also in clinics and all different kinds of settings. So, you know, some of the roles, some of the emphasis of their role might change a little bit. I think it still really always comes back to that core of meeting with the youth, helping make sure the youth has a voice in the process. You know, so sometimes it's really facilitating conversations to make sure that the youth can express themselves as a part of the treatment planning process and, you know, make sure they share how things are going, and then also just help the youth learn the skills that they need to be able to advocate for themselves and to navigate the service system. And because a lot of the young people are transition age youth, you know, they're switching between the kid system and the adult system as the youth care advocates are working with them. Go ahead, Azaria.
Also, additionally, as a youth care advocate working with service providers, they should be able to stand up and say, like, this is a roadblock that's being created by the system. Either it be policies, procedures, or whatnot, the youth care advocate should be able to be like, this is something that's causing the young person not to be able to speak up for themselves. So it's they're educators as well.
That's great, which kind of gets back to the youth guided training that you guys are also able to help agencies with. You know, you talked a little bit about the agency needing to really be moving in a youth guided direction as a foundation for hiring a youth peer advocate and having that go well. And I think that's something that all of the folks who are on the phone today might really want to look at. And, you know, how is it that they can move forward in becoming more youth guided? And you talked a little bit about some tools that are available to evaluate where these organizations are in terms of their youth-guided practice. Can you guys say a little bit more about those tools, how folks can access them, and how you might work with them around the use of those tools?
I was going to let Alex speak, but it's all our technical assistance tools and online resources are the biggest ones, and then our in-person trainings that we offer, such as the how-tos of youth-guided practice. And our technical assistance, our technical assistance form really goes through that evaluation of where you are now and the steps to take to move forward to be either youth-guided or implement youth peer advocates into the team.
Terrific. So if agencies are looking to, to hire a youth peer advocate, you probably would recommend that they start there by having a conversation with either the central office of Youth Power or their regional youth partner about their technical assistance needs and work on filling out that form. Is that the next step they would take?
Yes.
Terrific. Some people are asking some questions, Azaria, about the credentialing or certification process for youth peer advocates. Can you say a little bit more about how that works and what's, what that looks like for someone who's interested in becoming a youth peer advocate?
So all of that information was presented in our first training, but so there's 3 levels, well, there's 2 levels of the training, but there's level 1, which provides the young adult with the they get their provisional through level 1, which is an online training. Level 2 is also online, and then there will be an in-person training. They have to have a lived experience. They have to provide proof of their age and have like a high school diploma or GED or equivalent. That can potentially be waived, though, as long as they're able to meet the expectations of the position. So they have to complete 1 and 2. There's 3 letters of reference that they need to submit. They have to agree to practice according to the Youth Peer Advocate Code of Ethics that's being created currently. They have to demonstrate qualities of leadership themselves and document 600 hours of experience and complete 20 hours of continuing education every 2 years to maintain their credentialing, and have 3 consultation calls before they can become fully credentialed.
Thanks, Azaria. Another question related to that I think I can answer. Someone was under the impression that all the youth peer advocates are employees of Youth Power. But Youth Power does have a team of staff members who are doing a variety of different things, but most of the youth peer advocates that will exist in the state are hired by provider agencies who are actually working directly with youth themselves, and then they hire a youth peer advocate as a part of their team. Yeah, go ahead.
So all of the youth peer advocates will be hired by provider agencies. Youth Power does not have any designated youth peer advocates that they have on staff. And we would totally encourage all youth peer advocates to be a part of Youth Power as members, but our membership is voluntary. And the only way that we really interact with youth peer advocates is through technical assistance and our meetings, our professional development opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's a good point of clarification, that Youth Power isn't any direct service. They're really supporting the work of the youth peer advocates and the agencies that hire them in the field. Someone asked a question about where things stand with the state plan services being put on hold for 2 years. So there has been a recent announcement that the launching of some of the new services that New York State intends to implement will be delayed a little bit. And that process was going to be provide a mechanism for agencies to build Medicaid for a number of different services, including what was called youth peer support and training. That process is still underway. It's been delayed a little bit. Presently, agencies that are providing home and community-based waiver services are authorized to provide youth peer advocacy services. And they do that sometimes by hiring youth peer advocates directly and sometimes through contracts with other agencies that hire and support and supervise a youth peer advocate, who then is able to provide that service to youth who are receiving home and community-based waiver services. So that funding mechanism is still in place. And there are sometimes other funding mechanisms. Sometimes organizations find resources in their budgets or they receive grants that allow them to hire a youth peer advocate. There are a number of communities that have system of care funding that have hired youth peer advocates. And, you know, Azaria and Alex, you may know of some other funding mechanisms, but that access to state plan Medicaid funding is going to be delayed a little bit, but we anticipate that happening down the road.
Yeah, we definitely encourage agencies to reach out to Youth Power if you're interested in preparing to implement the Youth Peer Advocate services through our technical assistance. How am I supposed to read that?
Okay.
So with the credentialing, we are currently working on a plan to implement the training and credentialing. When we're continuing to develop the credential, and we will update on that. We also, yeah, there's more time to prepare and make sure that our credentialing is where it needs to be, and that agencies are where they need to be to provide the service. So we're definitely taking advantage of the time lapse.
Okay. I think for our last question, I want to turn to a question that someone asked about group work with young people through youth peer support. And the question says that under the state plan amendment services, youth peer support and training can be done in groups of 2 to 4 youth. I think that's also true under the home and community-based services waiver. So the person asking the question wonders if there is any additional guidance on how to run groups, namely who can run them, what should the content be, how do you select youth to be part of a group, and whether or not youth who are not receiving youth peer support and training services can be part of the group. Wondering if you can say a little bit about the work that you do with groups.
It's really limited to the SPA and certified youth peer advocates to providing those groups. If agencies are able to find funding to provide that youth peer advocate role, only those receiving services can participate in the groups under the SPA. So a young person has to be enrolled in health homes to take advantage of the youth peer advocate groups. But if an agency, if you guys aren't providing health home services, essentially you might want to provide it under additional funding. And we do, Youth Power has technical assistance forms around specifically implementing youth-guided services. Anything like this can be provided under our technical assistance through our regional youth partners.
And I would also say that as we assist, we can come in and help. I've done in the past help start groups and lay out the process, whether it be an advisory group or just a support group. But the regional youth peer advocates for Youth Power aren't in a position where they're allowed to continually run your groups. So if they assist to start it, they're really trying to help and find leadership, whether it be the youth peer advocate at your organization or a young person that's part of the group, to kind of take over that task, because it's kind of only within our duties to start that group and help support as needed, but not to come in and like run support groups for organizations.
Additionally, the training for the credential will provide more guidance on facilitating groups in the future.
Terrific. And, you know, there are a few questions coming in that have to do with some of the specifics around billing rules and group size as it relates to the state plan service of youth peer support and training. And, you know, a lot of those questions were still kind of on the table. And they, you know, all of the questions that folks are asking are really important around group size and how we bill for groups. And those technical questions are in the process of being answered by the state. So we're going to be looking for a little bit more guidance on that as we move forward.
There is some guidance in the SPA manual currently, but that's of course subject to change.
Exactly. It's a good reference. Yep. There's a provider manual that's available on CTAC's website but it's a draft provider manual, and it does provide a little bit of guidance, and as Azaria mentioned, it's undergoing some changes at the moment. So we only have 2 minutes left, but we have a really important question, and I just want to give you a chance to answer it. And it comes from a young person who is in high school and wants to know how to get started if she's interested in becoming a youth peer advocate.
They can take advantage of attending our peer leader support and development. They can get involved in our Youth Power Network, get in contact with their regional youth partner, and get involved with our regional teams. There's various ways. The best way is to really get connected with your regional youth peer advocate or youth partner.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because as especially in areas where there's kind of limited workforce currently, because we haven't been able to ramp up the recruitment and engagement. So I would definitely get connected with your regional youth partner, because there's many times where we're the first person approached when these jobs are coming out. So if we have someone that we've identified as a young leader, we'd be more likely to say, oh, well, this person on our team has been doing great work. They're trained in so on and so forth. So it kind of just connects you with these opportunities as they come, and it also puts you more in the eye of people offering these services or that may be hiring.
Another great way is to attend our University of Youth Power in June, from June 23rd to the 26th this year.
Thanks for those great suggestions. I want to thank both Azaria and Alex for all the useful information that you provided on today's webinar. We hope that everyone will stay tuned for future webinars on the important work and the important role of youth peer advocates. We thank you for participating today and encourage you to also listen to the January 11th webinar if you want more information. If you have other questions, you can reach out to Youth Power, or you can reach out to us at ctac.info@nyu.edu. And on behalf of CTAC and our presenters, I want to thank you for joining us today, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And